Hello, virtual English 2 students and quarantine students and even face-to-face students. Welcome to English 2. Paul Davidson here, your English teacher. Last week, or not last week, the week before last, whenever we were our last week of full virtual teaching, or virtual learning, I should say, I asked the people who actually showed up to the Zoom calls, hey, what do you want to learn? And somebody said commas. So we're going to learn about commas today. Specifically, we're going to learn about probably the main thing that I need y'all to start using in your writing to help really class it up, called subordinate conjunctions, which turn regular simple sentences into complex sentences. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment. But let's just talk about commas. Now, there are four main uses of commas. So the first main use that you'll see is separating items in a list of three or more. This is called the Oxford comma. So he ordered cake, comma, pie, comma, and ice cream. So there you go. That is the Oxford comma. So if you have a list of three or more, you need to put a comma between each item and before the conjunction right there. Then you also can use a comma to separate two sentences using fanboys. These are coordinating conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. So if these appear in the middle, you can put a comma before they show up. So Jim wanted to succeed in math class, comma, but he forgot to study for the test. You can also use this to set off an introductory end phrase from a main clause. This is what we're going to be doing with subordinating conjunctions, because this is kind of what this happens with. So after eating 8 donuts, comma, John felt bloated, and you can also use it to set off an apposite. Personally, I prefer to use parentheses or dashes to set off positive, but you can also use a comma. Washington, comma, the capital of the United States, comma, was built on marshlands. So are the four most common ways that someone would use commas. But the one that I need you to wrap your heads around is the subordinating conjunction, the complex sentence, the introductory and end clause. So let's talk about a clause first. So a clause is complete thought, one complete sentence. So a clause comes types. You have a main clause or a clause, a subordinate or a dependent, and the other two we're not going to worry about. We just need to worry about independent and dependent and subordinate clauses. One characteristic that will help distinguish one type of clause there are other characteristics that will help you to distinguish one type of clause from another. So the main clause, every main clause will follow this. You have a subject and you have a verb, and that's a complete thought. So you have a subject, the noun that's the topic what the entire sentence is about, and then you have a verb that tells us what that noun is doing. That's complete thought. So here are some examples. Lazy students whine. So students is the subject, whine is the verb. Cola spilled over the glass and splashed onto the counter. Cola is the subject, spilled / splashed are the verbs. My dog loves pizza crust is the subject, loves is the verb. Each of those are complete sentences. They're sentences that stand on their own. They're independent clauses. They are simple sentences. Now let's talk about complex sentences. Let's talk about the subordinate clause. A subordinate clause will follow this pattern. You have the subordinating conjunction, subject, verb, and that creates an incomplete thought. It doesn't really go anywhere. You need to attach it to an independent clause for it to make sense. So whenever lazy students whine, that's not a complete thought. We have to finish the thought. Whenever lazy students whine, we need to finish the thought. As cola spilled over the glass and splashed on my counter, what happened next? Because my dog loves pizza. Each of those clauses are sentences, technically, because they have a verb, subject, and a verb. The addition of subordinating conjunction makes it dependent on another sentence to make sense. So remember that subordinate clauses can never stand alone as complete sentences. To complete the thought, you must attach a subordinate clause to a main clause. Here's the pattern. So there's two ways that you do this. And this is what we're going to be working on today in your homework. So you could have an independent clause, a main clause, then you have subordinating conjunction, and then the other one. So the main clause, subordinate clause. If you do it like that, no comma is required. There's no commas needed. However, a comma is needed, and this is one of those commas that you need to start being more aware of, being more woke of, is whenever you have subordinate clause, then a main clause. So if the subordinate clause appears at the beginning, then you need to have a comma after it. Here are some examples. Whenever lazy students whine, comma, Professor Russell throws chalk erasers at their heads. Anthony ran for the paper towels as the cola spilled over the glass and splashed onto the counter. This one, the subordinate clause appeared at the beginning, so you had to have a comma at the end of it. This one, it appears in the middle, so you do not have to have a comma. Because my dog loves pizza crust, comma, he never barks at the delivery man. So most of the time, it will show at the beginning. That's where most subordinate clauses appear at the beginning of a sentence, and that's why this comma is so important. You will encounter subordinate clauses that appear in the middle, but most of the time, whenever people want to use a subordinate clause, it appears at the beginning. And if you notice right then, I use a subordinate clause, not even thinking about it, because language is not, we're just kind of putting qualifiers on these things that you already naturally know how to do. So the subordinate conjunction is what turns an independent clause into a subordinate one. So recognizing subordinate conjunctions when you see one. Some sentences are complex. Such sentences have two clauses, a main one or an independent one, and a subordinate one or dependent one. That's what makes them complex. You have three types of sentences. You have simple sentences, which is just an independent clause by itself. It is a noun, verb by itself. You have compound, where you take one independent and another independent clause and add them together using one of these coordinating conjunction, the fanboys up here. And then you have complex sentences, where you take a subordinate and a dependent clause and pound them together. So in order to turn something into a dependent clause or subordinate clause, you need to use some of the following. These are different words that you can use. These are different conjunctions, subordinate conjunctions you can use to turn a phrase into a subordinate clause. Now, the importance of why we do this is because it helps show relationship between your ideas. A sentence is an idea and another sentence is an idea, but you want to show how they're related, how they connect. And whenever you hear me talk about your ideas don't flow together, your ideas don't connect, that's because you are lacking the use of these types of words where you can show the relationship between them. So the subordinating conjunctions are after, although, as, because, before, even if, even though, if, that, provided that, rather than, since, so that, than, that, though, unless, until, when, whenever, where, whereas, wherever, whether, while, and why. The subordinate conjunction has two jobs. First, it provides a necessary transition between the two ideas in the sentence. This transition indicates a time, place, or cause and effect relationship. Here are some examples. Louisa will wash the sink full of dirty dishes once her roommate cleans his stubble and globs of shaving cream from the bathroom sink. We looked on top of the refrigerator where Jenny will often hide a bag of chocolate chip cookies. Because her chattering with fear, Linda clenched her jaw muscle while waiting for her turn in the audition. It shows how these two ideas work together. Technically, yes, you could say Louisa will wash the sink full of dirty dishes. Her roommate, Shane, cleans his stubble and globs of shaving cream from the bathroom. But it doesn't show a relation between the two ideas. Like removing that one once completely changes how that we are interpreting those particular sentences, those ideas. The second job of subordinating conjunction is to reduce the importance of one clause so that the reader understands which of the two ideas is important. The more important idea belongs to the main clause. The less important idea is in the subordinate clause, with the one with the subordinate conjunction. As Samson blew out the birthday candles atop the cake, he burnt the tip of his nose on a stubborn flame. Him burning his nose is more important than him blowing out the candles. Ronnie begins to sneeze violently whenever he opens the door to greet a fresh spring day. Sneezing violently is more important than opening the door. Even though Dana persevered at the calculus exam, she was only adding another F beside her name in Dr. Armour's grade book. Adding another F is more important than persevering during the exam. Once again, how to punctuate these things. This is where the comma comes into play. If the main clause, if the one that is the most important, the one that does not have a subordinating conjunction, appears at the beginning, then you don't have to have a comma. However, if the subordinate clause, the one with the subordinating conjunction, appears at the beginning, then you need to have the comma. That is the deal. That's all you really need to wrap your head around. This is where the comma is the biggest play. Punctuation gets trickier when subordinate clauses begin with relative pronouns like who, what, which, or where. Sometimes you will need a comma. Sometimes you won't, depending on whether the clause is essential or non-essential, but we're not going to get into that. All right. Let's jump to this part, which talks about subordinate clauses again. Recognizing subordinate clause when you see one. A subordinate clause is also a dependent clause. It will begin with subordinate or relative noun, which contains both a and a verb. This combination of words will not form a complete sentence. It will instead want additional information to finish the thought. Once again, here are all of the conjunctions. Here are some relative pronouns that also work as subordinate clauses or subordinating conjunctions sometimes. And it just provides you with more and more examples that you can go with for this. Okay, so why are we doing this? Once again, the big reason why is if there's one thing that I can get y'all to do to help improve your writing, it is to start using subordinate conjunctions, using these complex sentences, classing up your writing with them, and showing the relationship between the ideas that you have. That's the big reason why. You also someone asked me to teach you about commas. For the most part, that's like the biggest thing with commas that comes into play. Yes, you have them in a list of 3, but that's fairly easy to wrap your head around. Yes, you have one with the fanboys, those coordinating conjunctions, but if you see the conjunction, you just know to put it in front of the thing. When it comes to subordinating conjunctions, though, these subordinate clauses, these dependent clauses, that's where the whole comma controversy and the people not knowing what to do and how to use them really comes into play. All right. So that's the reason why we did it. And it is hands down the best way to help improve your writing. So I'm sorry, somebody sent me a text message and distracted me. Your assignment for tonight. Your assignment for tonight is I want you to write me 20 sentences. I want you to write me 10 sentences where the subordinating conjunction, I want you to write me 10 complex sentences where the subordinating conjunction appears at the beginning of the sentence. So you have, when I do my hands like this, comma, the camera gets all wonky. That would be a complex sentence with the subordinating conjunction at the beginning. If you need a subordinating conjunction to help you, in this document I uploaded, they have all the lists that you can use for it. So I want you to write 10 with the subordinating conjunction at the beginning, where you'll have to have a comma in the middle. And then I want you to write 10 complex sentences where the subordinating conjunction appears in the middle. No comma will be needed. So 20 sentences total, 10 with the thing at the beginning, 10 where it's in the middle. They can be any sentences. I want you to actually write your own sentences. It's not that it requires some thought, but you got this. You have your own thoughts that you can talk about. So just 20 sentences total, 10 where the subordinate conjunction appears at the beginning, 10 where the subordinate conjunction appears in the middle. In past years, I'd have you all get books to find them out in the actual wild, but due to the current situation, I can't let that happen. All right, but that's all I got for you. If you have any questions, email me, pdavidson@portugal.k12.mo.us. This will be due tomorrow at the beginning of, tomorrow at 11:59. Just type your sentences up and submit them, and I will see you then. And tomorrow we'll start reading a play, Isle by Eugene O'Neill. See you then. Bye.